Burnout. The point in your work where you just feel completely exhausted. For me, I start to think thoughts like, I can't do this anymore. Or when I think to myself, I've had enough. I personally think this isn't real burnout, but it can still feel hard to get over this mental wall. Recently, I went through another stage of this burnout, and so I'll be showing you what I did, and hopefully it helps you. What even is burnout? I believe I've never actually been through burnout, which is more of the physical or mental exhaustion, to the point where physical problems arrive. It's definitely a few stages higher than being stressed, to the point where you're so physically and mentally drained that your health becomes a concern. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. With this definition in mind, I think we use the term in our daily lives, but understanding what's actually happening helps a lot. When I'm feeling burnt out or I've had enough of this, what's actually going on in my head? I've noticed that I've become anxious or indecisive, or maybe I just stopped caring about what I'm pursuing. There could be a multitude of reasons along the ones I mentioned, but after labeling the emotion or problem that's going inside my head, it's much easier to see what the main problem is. Saying that you're just burnt out could mean, several of these things, or all of them at once. But I find that when I say it, I use it more as an excuse to avoid, whatever I need to do, because the term is so general. With this, there are two things that I've been doing. The first thing that I've done is to try to understand why I'm feeling this, and it starts with a ton of questioning. What am I afraid of? Am I avoiding something that I should be doing? What judgment do I have on the situation that I'm labeling as bad? For example, I have a pattern of being anxious whenever putting myself out there, through videos, through DMs. I can start to question, like, why do I feel so anxious? And maybe I'll come to the conclusion that putting my work out there is scary. And then I can ask myself, why do I think putting my work out there is scary? And that will lead to another answer of, I'm scared of what people think. I go through this process understanding that there's nothing really wrong with feeling this emotion. But what you can do is reframe it to seem like a smaller problem. You can start asking yourself, what's the worst that might happen? Or am I really making a life-threatening decision to post some video on a platform? The reason I do this instead of the common advice of resting is because I realized that just getting rest doesn't really do anything, especially since I'm not going through real burnout and I'm not physically or mentally exhausted. Rather, I just have a conflict in my head that I need to address. I find it more beneficial to question what's going on, rather than setting it aside and going to play video games or something like that. I've noticed that when I do go play video games, instead of dealing with my problems, it does help for, a short period, but it comes back, right? One of the more important questions that I'll highlight on its own is, how does this align with my goals? How does this help me get to the life I want? I started asking this because I realized that being overwhelmed and indecisive about something can lead me down a rabbit hole where I'll forget why I started in the first place. I personally have a habit of suppressing whenever I feel pain, and the suppressing ends up making me forget my goals from time to time. It's like if you were out in the forest to collect berries, but suddenly a bear chased after you. You're going to run for your life and forget about the berries. It's kind of the same thing. Your focus shifts from one thing to the next, and your goal of collecting berries gets disregarded for the sake of surviving. But instead of bears and berries, it's dealing with indecision and discomfort that gets prioritized over my goals. So when something like this happens, you can also do something called a clarity break, which I learned. Simply, it's a day of revisiting your goals and what they mean to you, deciding if they're still important to you, and then deciding on what actions take priority. Right, so it's just refiguring out everything. One thing I ended up doing a while ago was posting videos for 7 days straight, but I will have to say it was pretty stressful. And I wanted to take a bigger step forwards, but I couldn't get myself to. So I tried taking a couple days of rest, like most people say you should. The only problem is that those rest days didn't help because I used them more for, coping. Only once I decided to put my brain to work and figure out what was important to me did I finally get the motivation to work. Because usually it isn't real burnout. And if it isn't real burnout, then you're fine. Right? So that was the first thing. There's actually a second step that I've started implementing recently. And it's going to sound quite the opposite of the first one. And it's to start being okay with feeling anxiety and, stress, taking a deep breath, and then just continuing. Like I said, For most of my life, I've just been a chronic suppressor of my feelings. But I've recently noticed how it's influencing my progress towards my goals. Similar to the bear and berry example, where surviving the bear becomes the priority, I noticed that when my pain level gets to a certain threshold, my brain goes, nah, and stops chasing the goal, right? I want to achieve my goals, but I know it's going to cause a ton of pain and discomfort. So some advice I found was to learn to detach your feelings from your actions. Being open to pain, and then being open to feeling pain and be ready for it, but not give it leverage over the decisions I want to make. We're feeling pain because we want to avoid the wrong consequences or how taking action is going to make us feel. And I definitely agree that we should be okay with the feelings that we have, because there's nothing wrong with it. They're just signals, right? Signals that your brain thinks something is wrong, and it's trying to tell you to stop. By doing the first step of digging deeper and seeing what the real problem is, taking the extra step to not only understand why it's happening, but understanding that it's probably not going to go away, which is kind of funny because you're trying to run away from the pain and then you'll get more of it. But then when you accept it, it goes away. Like, what the hell? But I hope this helps.